All right, so just got done watching the race, and probably the first 20 laps were probably the best 20 laps of racing we've had the entire season. It was just nonstop cars passing each other. As usual in Spa, there was a few first corner incidents. Bruno Senna charged up the inside, and just locked up and slammed it into a Toro Rosso. I think that was Alguersuari at that point. And uh, there was I think the Toro Rosso ended up getting shoved into the Ferrari, and it was the getting shoved into the Ferrari that broke the track rod of the suspension. Um, and then there was another incident with Timo Glock, I believe, pushed one of the Lotus cars into another Lotus car and spun. Um, so that was going on. The start was definitely Nico goes to Nico Rosberg for the best start. He came to the grid. His brakes were a little bit steaming. I was worried he had an overheating engine, but got off incredibly well. Ended up, um, you know, first by the end of the first lap. Actually, he was first by the time they got to Lake Coombe. The Mercedes just had an incredible amount of speed. It was just a very quick car. I said after qualifying, I said, look out for the Mercedes powered uh, vehicles, and that was true. Um, Lewis Hamilton had a bit of an incident with Kamui Kobayashi, and I found myself screaming at the TV and yelling at David Coulthard because after Hamilton had made the pass on Kobayashi, they were going up from Eau Rouge to Lake Coombe, and Kobayashi was right on Hamilton's tail. And Hamilton, instead of keeping left, which is the racing line going into Lake Coombe, he pulled over towards the middle, and so that move made me believe that he understood Kobayashi was close enough that he was getting a slipstream. So he pulled out to the middle, thinking if I can drop him from the slipstream, I won't have a problem going into this turn. And then Kobayashi, had been in the slipstream, pulled up alongside him, and Lewis ended up kind of drifting left towards the usual racing line, which is to kind of keep left to give you the best turn in for the apex for Lake Coombe. And Coulthard and others were saying that Kobayashi, Coulthard said that Kobayashi turned in on Hamilton, which I don't believe is true. I think what happened, I think there were a few things that happened. I think Lewis, maybe thought Kobayashi was there but wasn't as close as he was. It appeared that after they made contact, Lewis hit the barrier, and then he spun around and kept going down the side of the barrier, and it looked as though Lewis lost consciousness. When the car was going down the side of the barrier, it didn't look like he tried to apply the brakes and miss. There was another piece of barrier that he kind of hit pretty softly, but it didn't appear as though he was conscious. So I'm not sure I buy the team line that it knocked his breath away, because he didn't move for quite a while. But I think it was a silly mistake on Lewis's part. But I also think that Kobayashi was putting faith in Lewis, and that faith was that even if Lewis was in the middle of the track, that Lewis was going to start to turn into Lake Coombe, and that Kobayashi, I don't think he thought he was going to make the pass, but I think he was going to be able to set himself up, in a good position. In hindsight, Lewis would have kept more to the right. Kobayashi would have gone left and skipped the chicane. The stewards called it a racing incident. So do I. I don't like Maldonado got interviewed at the end of the race, and I don't like Maldonado's answer, and I don't like that no one was really willing to call him on it. He, it's clear that when Lewis, tapped him going, coming out of the bus stop chicane towards the start-finish line during Q2 yesterday, it was clear that, that was because the Williams cars were slower and Lewis needed to finish a lap. And it was a tap. Um, whereas, Maldonado made a conscious decision to cut in front of Lewis, take off part of Lewis's front wing. And, that could have been a serious accident, even at 80 miles an hour. So, Maldonado needs to grow up, mature a little bit. I do like, speaking of, Eau Rouge, I did like Weber's pass. As Alonso was coming out of the pits, they were both charging down to Eau Rouge, and Weber got into the slipstream and passed Mark Webber going through Eau Rouge. Weber passed Alonso going through Eau Rouge, and Alonso backed out of the throttle and got out of the way. It was great. You can probably see Mark Webber's balls from space, but it was a pretty good move. And then the people who stormed through the pack, Jenson Button from 13th to 3rd, had a really good race. Michael Schumacher, of course, started 24th after his wheel came off during qualifying. He was all the way up to 5th. He ended up passing Nico Rosberg. I think Senna had a pretty solid race. He had incidents that required him to pit, which dropped him further down the line. But overall, it was a pretty thrilling race, and I think it's pretty safe to call the season for Sebastian Vettel. I think we still have 7 or 8 more races, but they hadn't won in a couple races, and people had started to think, well, maybe we can start to chip away, a few points at a time. And I think there probably was a little bit of a chance that could happen, but I think this win maybe closes the door on that. I think maybe it is now officially Sebastian Vettel's Drivers' Championship and the Red Bull Racing Championship. I think it's pretty much done and dusted. And even if it's not over, it's theirs to lose. They need to just keep finishing, podiums or even just top 10s. I think if Vettel just finished 5th from here on out, I'm pretty sure he'd still win the championship. Same thing goes for Red Bull. So looking forward to the end of the season. I'd like if other teams could start challenging them, even just for a race. But it'll be interesting to see what goes on. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks in Monza.